Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist, and today we're going to be doing a Zefra deck profile. So not just any Zefra deck profile, but a Patreon request Zefra deck profile by Gloomba331. So definitely comment down below and give Gloomba some love down in the comments for getting this deck to you guys. I am really excited to show you guys this deck because it's absolutely insane and probably one of my favorite archetypes to play in Pendulums, because it's just really interesting that the way that they actually produce this deck to fuse all sorts of different archetypes like Tellarknights, Shaddolls, copies of Yang Zings, just all those really good old school Duelist Alliance era monsters just fused into one climactic deck to make Zefra. This deck is really cool, and I'm really excited to show you guys this deck. So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell on there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below because we got some awesome rewards for you guys, like getting your game description for every single video, getting a signed cards in the mail, or even getting requested deck profile just like this one every single month if you're a patron with test hands, which there will be test hands of this deck coming soon thanks to Gloomba331. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Zefra. Zefra's main monster effect doesn't really come into play, so we're not going to really go over that, because you're never going to summon this card on the field. It takes 3 you have to treat every single monster on your side of the field to summon this card, including at least 3 Zefra monsters. The cost is entirely too high, so we're not even going to go over that. The Pendulum effect is the card that you're going to be activating the majority of the time on this card, like 99.9% of the time, so we're just going to go over that. So basically what this card does is when it's in your Pendulum scale during your main phase, you can add a Zefra monster from your extra deck, or from your deck to your extra deck, which is really good to be able to use them as Pendulum summon. It's almost like a search card, but kind of a weird way of searching, but you put them in your extra deck and then you change the pendulum scale of this card to that monster's pendulum scale. Like for instance, if I send my Zefraxi Treasure of the Yang Zing, I can just change it to a pendulum scale of 1, which is really good to just change the pendulum scale to manipulate it to be the exact pendulum scale you need to pendulum summon out the monsters that you need out on your side of the field. We then play 2 copies of these Tellarknight Zefra monster. This card's really good. It's essentially Scrap Dragon. If it's normal flipped or pendulum summon, you get to target a Tellarknight or Zefra monster in your monster zone or a pendulum zone and 1 card your opponent controls, and you destroy them both, which is really good to be able to pop them both. We play 1 of the other Tellarknight. They have like 2 of each one, so you're playing the other Tellarknight Zefra monster. This card's actually based on Exciton Knight, which is kind of weird. But if this card is normal, flipped, or pendulum summoned, then you can target 1 other Tellarknight or Zefra monster in your monster zone or pendulum zone, and 1 set card your opponent controls and destroy them. So both these pop cards on your opponent's side of the field, which is really good. We then play 3 copies of the Treasure of the Yang Zing. This card's really good because it has the ability to change a Zefra monster on your side of the field to a tuner monster, which is really good to be able to change those monsters on your side of the field, so you can start synchro summoning into Chow Fang, into your Ravenous Crocodragon, or even into a copy of Psyframe Lord Omega. I mean, you have a lot of really good cards in this deck that you can synchro summon into, but this card is overall really good, and if it's pendulum summon or a special summon, you can use that effect. Also, you place this card on the bottom of the deck when it leaves the field, which is not that big of a deal if you use its effect. We then play 3 copies of the Zefra Nui, the Secret of the Yang Zing. This card's really good because it searches. This card is like one of the cards that you want to get to the most, and I love its artwork. Like, its face is so derpy, and I just love it. Like, it's one of the reasons I actually really enjoy playing this deck is because of that card's face. But what this card does is when this card is pendulum summoned, or when this card is destroyed by battle or by card effect, while you control it in your monster zone, you can add a Yang Zing or Zefra spell or trap from your deck to your hand. This card is so pivotal in the deck, it's ridiculous, because it's going to search out the 2 cards that you need the most, which is the 9 Pillars of the Yang Zing or Divine Strike, which is so important in this deck to get those counter traps to go into the grind game. We play a single copy of the Ritual Beast Tamer Zefra Windy. Zefra Windy is really good in this deck too. I play as a 1-of because when she's normal or pendulum summon, you can add a face-up Zefra monster from your extra deck to your hand, so you don't have to use those zones. I have some really amazing tech cards in the extra deck that kind of don't even worry about the pendulum summoning mechanic anymore, because you're getting so many link zones on your side of the field to special summon to. It doesn't even matter, but sometimes it does matter, and that's where Zefra Windy comes in. We then play 3 copies of Madolche Mageline. I know we're not playing Madolches, but we're playing Mageline because the reason you play Mageline is really insane. Because you can search a single copy of Petting, which is really good. You guys are probably looking at this and going, wait, we're not playing Madolche. what's going on? Well, this card is used to bait out Ash, because the really cool thing is the majority of the time in this deck, you're not going to have cards in your graveyard that are monsters. You're usually going to have them in the extra deck because you're playing Pendulums. So you can normal summon out the copy of Magdalene to bait your opponent's Ash Blossom, to bait your opponent's any card, and they'll think usually when you normal summon this card first that you're playing essentially a Madolche deck, and they'll prepare for dealing with Madolches. Then you go into the Zefra cards and they're like, oh my god, what? What happened? Why are you playing Zefra now? What happened here? So the Magdalene is really good at throwing your opponent off and getting your petting on your side of the field to go into link plays. And she has a really cool effect that if you have no monsters in your graveyard, you can special summon her from your hand. She has an added effect that if you special summon this card, then you can special summon a Madolche from your hand or deck. You never want to do that, but you have to reduce its level by 1. Never use that effect. Only special summon her from your hand, because if you use that second effect, only if you use the second effect, she locks you into Madolche monsters. Don't use that effect. We then play a single copy of my personal tech, which is a single copy of Cyberstein. So Cyberstein you might be looking at and going, why are you doing that? Well, I told you this deck is crazy. So you're playing a single copy of the Naturia Exterdao, or Extero. This card's really insane in this deck, and it's really easy to summon with a copy of Cyberstein, and you can stack the deck with the Oracle of Zefra to put your copy of Cyberstein on top of your deck to be able to draw into it with your Crocosaurus, with your Crocodragon, and it just instantly get your copy of your Cyberstein to your hand, normal summon it, pay the 5,000, summon out the copy of your monster, and you can end up with a copy of that and a copy of True King of All Calamities on your side of the field, and your opponent can't do anything. So, then we play, for the hand traps, we're playing 3 copies of Cyframe Gear Gamma. Gamma is really easy to summon in this deck, and it's really good because a lot of times when you're playing decks like this, your opponent's going to try and stop every single card that you're going to play. So Gamma's really pivotal to be able to just stop hand traps. 1 copy of Driver to summon off the Gamma. And then we're playing a single copy of Gizmet Kaku, the Supreme Shining Sky Stag. I don't actually currently have this card. I have one coming in the mail, but I wanted to go ahead and get this deck out to Gloomba as quickly as possible because I wanted them to be able to enjoy this deck. And I try and get those Patreon quests out as quickly as possible. I do have one, again, coming in the mail, and I'll probably have it for the test hands. I don't know. It's kind of crazy right now with, you know, dealing with getting stuff mailed in. But anyways, if this card is in your, if you have a monster in the extra monster zone, or if a monster is in anybody's extra monster zone, you can special summon this card from your hand. And this is actually how you make True King of All Calamities, because you use this card with a copy of the Ravenous Crocodragon, and then you overlay both of these to go into it. You again, when you go into this with Oracle of Zefra on the field, you can stack the deck for getting this to your hand, put this in your extra monster zone, instantly special summon this card out, and then you get your copy of the True King of All Calamities. Easy peasy to get out that card, but you need to play 1 copy of Gizmet Kaku. We then play a single copy of Nibiru. I know, crazy, huh? Why am I playing Nibiru? Again, stack the deck. You can stack the deck for Nibiru. You can search it with Gallant Granite, which we play in the extra deck. Not that big of a deal. Easy card to get to. And you just need 1 because it's searchable. It's so searchable in this deck, you just play 1. And then for the last 3 monsters, I play 3 copies of Ash Blossom. The 3 Ash Blossoms are super pivotal to be able to stop my opponent's hand trap, or to stop my opponent's plays that they're trying to do with a hand trap. So that's it for the monsters, guys. I know it's a lot, but usually Pendulum decks play a lot of monsters. So let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're going to be playing a single copy of Terraforming because you need to get to the Oracle of Zefra as quickly as possible. We're playing a single copy of Reinforcements of the Army. Rhoda is really good in the deck too because you play a couple of warrior monsters and it just thins the deck out a little bit. 1 copy of Mind Control. Mind Control is really neat because I have a tech card in the extra deck that's an XZ monster that you can use a monster on your opponent's side of the field to XZ into it regardless of level. I'll let you guys guess that one down in the comments down below before you get to it. We play a single copy of Zefra Path. Zefra Path is a card that you weren't usually playing in Zefra decks, but when you activate this card, if you have 2 Zefra cards in your Pendulum zone with activate Pendulum Scales, with active Pendulum Scales between 1 and 7, if this card is activated, you shuffle all monsters you control into the deck. That's bad. That's not great. That's the only downfall to this card, except for Zefra monsters. That's okay now. We're okay. This card also has the ability that neither player can special summon monsters except from the hand or extra deck. So it locks down graveyard, it locks down main deck, it locks down both of those, and it just stops so many plays. I mean, when you can't special summon from deck as an Adamancipator deck, or you can't special summon the Eldridge with Scarlet Sangria, you're in a bad position. I mean, especially when you're going in, even against some Noble Knights that are tier 1 right now. They special summon so many tuners from the deck with Isolde and stuff like that. I mean, it's ridiculous. This card shuts down so many decks. It's ridiculous. It's like a small Vanity's emptiness, almost. We then play 3 copies of Zefra Providence. Zefra Providence is the search card of the deck. You can add a Zefra card from your deck to your hand, and then if a Zefra card you control would be destroyed by battle, or destroyed, you can just banish this card from your graveyard instead, which is really good for this deck to be able to just banish those cards. And then we play 3 copies of Oracle of Zefra, which is the most pivotal card in the deck. This card is ridiculously good, and actually one of the reasons I love playing this deck is for just the artwork of this card. This card is insanely beautiful. What this card does is when you activate this card, you get to add any Zefra card from your deck to your hand that's a monster. Not that big of a deal because you're going to add usually Zefrath or the particular piece that you don't have. It also has the ability that depending on the material that you use or the monster that you summon using a Zefra monster, you get the following effect. If you use a ritual monster, you're never going to use this. You shuffle a monster from your on the field into the deck. If you fusion summon, you're never going to use that either. You special summon a monster from your hand. Not that big of a deal. But if you synchro summon though, if you synchro summon, you get to choose a monster from your deck and place it on top of the deck to stack it to then draw it out with the Crocosaurus, which is the Kaiku, to make True King of All Calamities. This card enables True King of All Calamities like you would not believe. It also has the ability, if you XZ, you get to draw a card and then discard a card. That one doesn't come up quite as much, but it's there if you need it. So, that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get into the traps. Essentially, with the traps, you just have a bunch of I Said No cards, which is Zephyr War, Divine Strike, and 9 Pillars. Basically, these two the exact same thing. When a spell trap or monster effect is activated, you can banish a face-up Zephyr monster from your extra deck and negate the effect. If you have a Yang Zing on the field, you can destroy the Yang Zing. And then, or when a spell trap or monster effect is activated, you can, while you control Yang Zing, negate the effect, and you shuffle that card in the deck and destroy Yang Zing. And then Zephyr War is really good because it lets you target a Zephyr monster you control and a card your opponent controls and destroy them. You have 2 Zephyr cards in your Pendulum Zone. You can activate this card from your hand. So it's kind of like Impermanence almost, but popping 2 cards, but it's really good. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the insane extra deck. So for the extra deck, you guys are going to get whiplash from this, I swear. But what this card does is you're going to summon a Chao Fang. Chao Fang is really crazy because this is one of the 1 cards I'm probably actually going to read in this. What this card does is when its Synchro Summon card is on the field, your opponent cannot activate cards or effects with the same original attribute as the Yang Zing monsters you use to Synchro Summon this card. You're only going to use Earth, but it locks your opponent's Adamancipator decks down. It locks down a lot of Earth decks because Earth is actually the most supported type in the entire game of Yu-Gi-Oh! If you didn't know that. But also, if this card is on the field, destroy a battle of our card effects and sent to the graveyard, you can add a tuner monster from your deck to your hand, and then once per turn, when a monster your opponent controls is destroyed by battle or by card effect, you can special summon a worm-type monster from your deck in defense position, whose original attribute is the monster that one monster is destroyed had on the field. So if I'm going up against Adamancipator, I can pop against a copy of like Doki Doki, and then when I pop the Doki Doki, or for instance a copy of a Adamancipator monster, I can just special summon out a copy of a Zephyr monster that's an Earth monster that's a Yang Zing from my deck, like a Zephyr Nui or one of my 2 treasures from the deck, which is pretty good. Also, it's level 9, so you can go to True King of All Calamities. Ravenous Croco Dragon, really good, probably the ace of the deck, probably what you're going to summon the majority of the time in this deck, because if this card is Synchro Summon, you get to draw cards equal to the number of non-tuners you use to synchro this card, which is going to be 1, which lets you stack the deck, because you stack the deck first. We use it as a Chain Link 2 to stack the deck. Uses as Chain Link 1. When you summon it with Oracle Chain Link 2, this Chain Link 1. Oracle stacks Kaiku, and then you draw a card off this card when it's Synchro Summon, and then you can discard 2 cards, and then target a card on the field and destroy it as well, which is really, really good. We play a single copy of Psyframe Lord Omega just to take cards out of our opponent's hand. Access Code Talker to be able to pop cards, and then my really cool surprise tech of this deck is a single copy of Draco Masters of the Txne. Draco Masters of the Txne has 3 downward arrows, and is in that card that I was talking to you guys about at the beginning, where it just doesn't care about the link mechanic because it has 3 downward arrows and it's really good. It also just takes a link monster, 2 monsters plus a link monster, which we can do that really easily in this deck, and it can be destroyed by battle with effect monsters. If you control no effect monsters, you can destroy effect monsters your opponent controls up to the number of non-effect monsters you control or in your graveyard, which you're never going to use that effect, but it can be destroyed by battle by effect monsters, and then the downward arrows are really insane. One copy of Selene. Selene's actually a card that you go into quite quite a lot in this deck with Pendulum decks. It puts spell counters on this card, and you remove 3 spell counters from this card, especially summon a spellcaster from your graveyard for your hand or grave, which actually Magileine is a spellcaster type monster, so you can special summon Magileine back, and then use this with a Magileine to go into Access Code Talker, Unicorn to spin stuff, Phoenix to pop spells and traps, and then a single copy of the Earth Charmer Immovable. This card's really good in the deck because everything is pretty much Earth. I mean, you have so many Earth cards in this deck, it's ridiculous, and it lets you target an Earth monster in your opponent's graveyard and special summon it to your side of the field to a zone this card points to, which is really good. And if this Link Summon card card is destroyed by battle or is destroyed by an opponent's card effect while it's in its monster zone, you can add an Earth monster with 1500 or less defense from your deck to your hand, which is pretty good as well. Cyframe Lord Lambda. Lambda is pretty interesting in this deck. Lambda is basically just here for the Cyframe package that you're playing in the deck. I like it. I've thought about dropping it, but I don't know really what I want to put in this place yet. But it's really good for now because it lets you activate your Cyframe monsters while you control a monster on your side of the field. True King of All Calamities, probably the best card in the extra deck and really insane. Just turns off all monster effects, which is insanely good. And now this is the other card that I was talking to you guys about that can use a monster with mind control. What this card does is if you use a monster with a level that is owned by your opponent, you can treat it as a level 6 to overlay into this card. That's why Mind Control is good in this deck, because you already summon your extra deck monster. Actually, I'll tell you what I would drop for this. I would put in a Jinzo Layered. I would drop this, put in a Jinzo Layered. If you want to play Jinzo Layered in this position, you can drop the Lambda and put Jinzo Layered. So, Sheridan is really good because you can just pop a card on your opponent's side of the field by detaching material. You can once per turn detach material from this card, target a card your opponent controls, send it to the graveyard, and then once per turn, if a monster is sent from the field to the graveyard by a card effect, or a monster is destroyed and sent to your opponent's graveyard, you can detach material from this card, special summon one of those monsters to your field, which is really good. We then play a single copy of Redoer. Redoer is pretty good because it can take cards off the top of your opponent's deck and then get certain effects. Gallant Granite is pretty good too. Gallant Granite lets you search the Nibiru and search Zefrath, which is also really good. And then the final card of the extra deck is the Naturia Fusion Monster, because I like playing Cyberstein in this deck and it works. And it just gets you so many negates. This plus True King of All Calamities is nuts, I have to say, because when this card is faceable on the field, you can negate the activation of a spell or trap card and destroy it by removing from play one card from your graveyard and then sending the top card of your deck to the graveyard as well. So it's constantly like reloading itself to be able to just negate cards, and it's not once per turn either. So you just have this to negate monsters, this to negate spells and traps, and it locks everything down. Like, they can't do anything. So that's it for the deck, guys. I know that was a little bit of a longer video, but I really wanted to get in depth with this one because this deck has a lot of different effects, and I'm looking forward to doing test hands for this one because it's going to be absolutely insane. But definitely give Gloomba331 some love down in the comments for requesting this deck, because it really is insane and it's really, really fun to play around with. And it's probably like, I usually don't play a lot of Pendulum decks, but this is one of them with like Dynamist, this, and like Pendulum Magicians that I'll actually pick up and play consistently. And I just love the way that the deck plays. It's just really fun. So that's it for this deck. I hope you guys enjoyed this one. It's really fun to play around with. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below. And watch out for test hands. See you later, guys.